Monday's quiz will basically consist a lot of what we're doing today. So we'll be talking about a little bit about where do we fit in the whole animal scheme of things, some of the aspects of physiology, and we're going to continue that trend into next week as well. So it should be a pretty brief quiz, but we'll get ourselves kind of well oiled for that first day and work out some of the kinks that go with eye clickers. So we'll do that on Monday, and that is at the beginning of class. So make sure that you're ready for that. Again, we've got our picture of the day here, and it's one that I think is just very reflective of the course as well. And that we've got, of course, this human riding a horse, and if you kind of look at it, it's kind of creepy but kind of cool, looking at the skeletal features that are there. And so as you start to do some comparisons that are there may be things that stick out to you in terms of, I look at the skull right away and just think about, wow, look at where the cranium, where the brain is sitting versus that of the horse. And again, that size ratio aspect, or the jaw. Notice how large that jaw is of that horse compared to ours. That's something actually we'll be talking about when we get to the digestive system, of this kind of trade-off of cranial capacity, but jaw size. There's kind of this balance between those things. Also, as you may be looking at some of these features in terms of built for speed and all these other components, again, it's a nice comparative approach of looking at some of these things and getting an appreciation of what's below the skin. All right, so some of the things we're going to explore. So this is just a rundown of what we did last time. So again, make sure you've looked over the syllabus on your own. And these are some of the things that we're going to be hashing through today and then also into next week. Also, hopefully you've gotten a chance to look at the Moodle site. You'll notice that there are notes posted. Those are actually for today and actually into next week. And then over the weekend, I'll post another batch that will be part of next week and then probably into the third week. So you always get those posted ahead of time, and you want to look at them ahead of time. And they may help you as you guide through yourself of looking through the book, what's important, what's not. All right. Also, there is your kind of warning there of a quiz, yes, Monday. So make sure you look over the things that we discussed today. All right, and register those clickers. Get them ready to go so that you're ready to go on Monday. I'm also going to post a little pretest. It's just something for you to look at, try to answer, and then I'll post those answers a little bit later. But it gives you an idea of some of the questions that might come up and what you know already, what maybe you don't know already, and then also what you'll gain at the end of the course. So before I continue with one other announcement, any questions from last time as you've started to look through the syllabus, anything now that's kind of come to mind that you want some clarification on? All right. So one more announcement here. I'll be sending around a sign-up sheet. We do have a student in class with a disability who works with the Disability Resource Center on campus and needs a note-taking assistance. So on behalf of the student and the DRC, I'm asking each of you to consider being a volunteer note taker for this course. The only qualifications are that the note taker has legible handwriting or is proficient typist, plans to attend class regularly, and is willing to share notes. The DRC can provide a prepaid copy card and information on copy machine locations if the notes can just be shared via email. So I'll be circulating this sign-up sheet, so feel free to sign. So write your name, your phone number, email address, and the student who needs the notes will actually contact you. All right, so thank you for your assistance on this. And again, we are a community of learners here, so this is a nice way to help a fellow student out. All right, so let's get back into some of the content here if there aren't any questions. So last time, as we left class, I asked you guys this question as to what do you want to walk away from the course with in terms of what do you want to gain? And I got some interesting responses, and as I walked around, I also heard some interesting responses along the way. And I have a feeling we'll tackle a lot of the things that you want to get out of this, whether it be learning more about yourself, or one of the big things as I was kind of listening in was connecting this topic to others. So a lot of times when we take courses, they're just so narrow in their focus. But as you're going to find, this is going to connect to a lot of your classes, from physics to chemistry and so on. So that's one of the kind of nice things that's there. Some of you may have taken an anatomy class and didn't get the whole story. You learned all these structures but had no idea what they actually really did. So now we're filling in those blanks that are there. All right, so again, connecting dots. Now at the end, someone mentioned something about squid and chromatophores and changing colors and all that. We're going to cover a lot of creatures. But remember, the animal world is quite big, so we can't tackle them all. But I'm giving you guys a hint right now as to what one of your final projects is going to be. Is it actually picking a creature that inspires you, that has a really unique physiologic aspect, and actually researching that and looking into, okay, what makes this creature so unique and its physiology, explaining it. So throughout the semester, plant that seed in your head that you should be thinking about some of these creatures that maybe we just touch on very lightly or not at all, that you want to explore more on your own. Okay, so there is a final project that does involve that. And I'll mention more of that as we get down to that. So here is one of those kind of unique creatures, as we'll start to think about. This lovely beast, very cute, very primitive, is our horseshoe crab. Not so much crab-like, but more spider-like. And as we look at this adorable thing, have you ever had a chance to hold these? They're really cool. But as we think about this, they are unique in a lot of respects, and in one that you've been touched in some way by such a creature. And one being this. So one of the things that we'll be exploring a little bit later is blood. All right? And so here, this is some bloodletting of these creatures. And you'll notice something unique about their blood, and that it's blue. All right? Our blood's red. All right? So instead of having iron as their main oxygen binding, they have copper. So copper gives this bluish look. And that's pretty cool. But we're also going to explore their immune system. All right? So comparing our immune system with that of these other creatures. And one of the things that's kind of unique about this immune system is that they have these amoebocytes that are kind of like our white blood cells. And so if there is an infection, they have this kind of gummy effect of kind of isolating the infection. And we've actually used the protein that is in this blood for pretty much anything that you've been injected with, all right, any drug that you've taken, to understand if that drug, before you inject yourself, is contaminated. All right, so as we start to think about the things that we want to learn and gain from this class, of course, we're going to make these connections, but also we have to come back to the idea that some of these serve as wonderful model organisms, or that there's something there that may be also beneficial to us in our medical sense. Also, lovely, cute creature here, gorgeous. This is a cone snail, and we're going to talk about cone snails a little bit as well when it comes to getting to know our nervous system, and getting to understand nervous systems of other creatures, and of course getting to know something called venom therapy. And so this is a cone snail doing what it does best. It's got a lovely harpoon that goes after prey items, and there's a venom in there that stuns that prey. We're looking into the venom itself in terms of venom therapies to help with pain, okay, and a non-addictive kind of pain relief. But a new study that was just released also shows that some of the venoms actually have loads of insulin in them. So you can start to think about, okay, whoa, there's insulin in there. Maybe there's something to be gained and understood about how our own insulin regulatory systems work. Maybe there's something to be gained from this as well. So who would think some of these cute creatures, invertebrates, have a lot for us. So let's go ahead and jump into the notes. And as we do so, you'll notice that sometimes there's a little bit of gaps in there. You really make sure you obviously listen as you take notes, but also if you're idle and not doing much, there may be something wrong. Okay, so as you're going through, make sure you're listening, but also jotting things down. You shouldn't be looking at a blank page. All right. So one of the things that came up last time as we talked about this was understanding anatomy and what is physiology. So we're just going to hash that out right now. One really key thing is that you're going to notice you can't do one without the other, all right? So as we look at this, it's going to be quite impossible for us to talk about physiology without exploring the anatomy, all right? And just talking about anatomy is boring, all right? It's really, we want to know how all this stuff works, all right? So when we think about anatomy, we're going to break the word down a little bit here, and then as we look at it, the Greek of it, ana, is a part, tomi, to cut. All right, so basically, as we're looking at this word, to to understand, okay, what is the heart? You had to cut into it and look inside, right? Or take a look at a kidney and slice it, do a nice section of it to look at it. So Anna, a part, told me to cut. So what this is getting at is the form. All right, when we study anatomy, we're getting to know the structure, identifying all the different components of it, but it's all about the form of it. All right? So as we look at this, we're studying the structure and the shape of the body when we're looking at anatomy. Okay? And as we look at this, we're going to be looking at it from all different levels. When we say gross anatomy, we're looking at not the disgusting stuff, but it is kind of disgusting, but we're looking at the thing that we can see visually with the naked eye, and that if I'm holding the heart right now in my hands, okay, that's gross anatomy. But if I start to do sections of the heart, and now I have to put those sections underneath the microscope. Okay, we're looking at microscopic anatomy. And we're going to be doing a balancing act between looking at those two things. Really, the action is at the microscopic anatomy. It really tells the story as to what is going on with this structure. All right, so we'll be looking at both in this course. When we look at physiology, all right, now we can break this word down a little bit more in Greek. So physio, the nature, ology, the study of. So we're looking at the nature of things, all right? And so this is where we're looking at the function behind these structures. How do they work? What do they do? All right, that is physiology, all right? So as I'm looking at the heart and I'm like, all right, cool, there's all these chambers here. I'm getting to know all these different chordae tendineae, the strings of the heart and so on. That's all the anatomy. But when I start to look at how the heart functions, how the blood is pumping, looking at the conduction system that's in that heart, now I'm looking at the physiology of it. All right? So you'll hear me often say form and function. Form's going to equal anatomy, function equals the physiology. So here we're looking at the study of how the body works and how its parts function. So as we're going to explore this, again, it's a tight teamwork between the two topics. Okay. All right, so of course our job is to get to know the human and of course to explore these other animals of it. So as we're starting to get to know this, we'll talk about some of these other creatures and so their hearts, looking at an insect heart, for example, comparing that with the human heart, and also understanding how they actually function can be really different. All right, so another really kind of key thing that we need to also just come out right away, and I've mentioned this already, but to come back to the idea that physiology, okay, of course needs anatomy to explain it, but not only that, in that it's a complex topic, and it is one that is going to be encompassing physics, it's going to be encompassing chemistry, so as we start to talk about these topics, we got to intertwine those in there as well. And since we're also tackling these other animals, we'll include some zoology as well. So just to give you guys some frame of reference, when we start to talk about nerve conduction, ionic current, all this, we're going to be talking about Ohm's law. So we talk about gas exchange with the lungs and the gills. We'll talk about Boyle's laws, or the ideal gas laws, and so on. So we're starting to intertwine a lot of these other topics that probably you're gaining from some of your other classes. All right? So let's jump into a little bit about the aspect of zoology a little bit more. So as we get into this, one thing that I like to just start out with is getting a basis of, okay, do we know what we are? Okay, we're humans, yes, but we're animals as well. And so getting just a basic breakdown of our own classification, and this is going to help you understand the language that I use when I start to talk about some of these other organisms. So for example, I'll be talking a lot about vertebrates and invertebrates. And so I want you right away to have a nice clarification of where all that is. All right? So as we look at this, let's just make sure we understand some things about where we all fit in this whole thing. All right, so in essence, we should just call the course animal physiology, right? And that it is, okay, humans, sure, we're special. But it's really all about animals. All right, so as we think about that, well, what makes an animal an animal? And so one of the things that you're already kind of staring at here with kind of the breakdown of some of the classification is that, all right, well, we're not bacteria, all right, or the archaea that are there, we're eukaryotes. So one of the kind of big defining things as we look at this is that if we're defining an animal, we're eukaryotic. All right, meaning, and this comes back to, of course, some basic biology, is that, okay, our DNA is housed within a nucleus, all right? So, easy enough. But what else makes us an animal? So what makes an animal an animal? So, okay, we're eukaryotic, done. But what else? What else makes an animal an animal? Yeah.
Multicellular.
Okay, multicellular. And I know this seems like trivial, like, okay, we're not a protist, okay, and those are eukaryotic. But yeah, we have multiple cells. So we're multicellular. And that's a big deal in terms of our discussion about physiology. Because, as we're going to start to look at, you need multiple cells to build tissues. Tissues build organs. Organs build organ systems. So that's already like a really big piece of what we're exploring. It's going to be a little different from looking at, let's say, bacteria. All right, so what else makes you an animal? Okay, so that actually is something really interesting, and that to get to here, sexual reproduction, and we need gametes, all right? So like having sperm and egg, particularly the sperm aspect there, that's a really key part of the puzzle to this unification and making a zygote, but there's the really key part is going one step further, right, to the multicellular level. But that's a starting point for sure. What else? We're animals, all right? We've got to define this. Eukaryotic, multicellular, yeah. Okay, so as we think about this, we have all these demands in terms of energy and needing that, doing cell respiration versus, I would love to do photosynthesis, but it isn't going to happen. So as we think about that, we can say, okay, well, we're not autotrophic, but we're heterotrophic. All right, which is coming to that aspect of being a heterotroph. Yeah, you do cell respiration. However, I'd love to be green, but Now, here's one of the things, is that there's always these tiny little exceptions, and that there's a wonderful little sea slug that actually kind of does a little bit of photosynthesis, but we're just going to ignore that for now, all right? So, all right, so what else? Why are you not a fungus? I mean, you might call somebody a fungus, but you're not. Why aren't you a fungus? Because so far, funguses fit this definition too. Something that we do all the time, and it's awesome. All right, well, breathing's pretty sweet too. Yeah.
Nervous system?
Okay, so interesting thing about the nervous system is that I'm going to curse the sponges, I think, literally every day in this class because they don't have one, all right? So sponges are going to be kind of the weirdos. They're animals. They're loosely animal, but they lack that nervous system. So they're kind of odd there. So one of the kind of nice things is that when we think, did I almost see a hand? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, we can move. That's an interesting too, because I am going to curse the sponges again, and that they, not so mobile, and we'll run into some of the like sea anemones. Some of those are semi-mobile, but So the sponges, they're less so. So yeah, you think, okay, well, where do they fit? Yeah.
Do they have a cell wall?
Okay, so that's one aspect. We can look at the cell wall as something that can nicely separate it. And the other thing is this idea of being ingestive. All right, and that we have to take in food and break it down and then absorb up the nutrients. All right, so we have this ingestive nature that is there. That something has to come in, and then we got to break it down, go through this process, and then absorb up those nutrients. When we look at fungi, they just get to absorb. So we say they're more absorptive. So again, we'll be going through some of these concepts of talking about, okay, this ingestive aspect that we have, and then yes, we do eventually have to break things down to absorb those nutrients. Another really key thing that makes an animal is a really key protein, the kind of starting block to starting to build tissues. All right, and that is collagen. So collagen's also something that we would lump into this kind of defining of what makes an animal in a really general sense. So keep that key protein in mind, because like I said, things get interesting as we start to build these tissues, because that means we're going down this road of building organs and eventually organ systems. So collagen is that foundation, that protein that's there that's going to help us build those tissues. All right, so again, as we start to look at this lovely collage of animals, when we think about our classification, all these lovely creatures are animals, including, yes, the sponges, loosely animal-like, but these all have some of these characteristics that we're looking at. Now, of course, we're going to start